Okay, I'm Jim Hollan, and along with the other Design Lab members and Scott Klemmer, we'd like to welcome you to this celebration of Don Norman and a bit of a look to the future of the Design Lab. When I was trying to put together some notes to mention this, a couple of years ago, I got a Lifetime Achievement Award from SIG Chi and the ACM. Honestly, my first thought was, I was surely honored, but my first thought was, I think this is a bit too early. Maybe I would like it be postponed a bit. And then I realized that Don, many years ago, had gotten the same award. And it surely didn't slow him down. I was very much looking forward to these years. The other thing that happened during that time is I think very rarely do we sort of step back and reflect on one's own career or other people's careers. And I found it actually incredibly enjoyable and valuable to do that. And I think if anything we're going to do today, we're going to try to do that a little for Don's amazing career and then look to the future. So we have two panels and a series of speakers. And so introduce things. For me, UC San Diego is an incredibly special place. Of course, we have nearly ideal weather except for today. It's a beautiful setting. And personally for me, it's really important that we're in walking distance to one of California's best surf breaks at Black's. But what really makes UCSD special is the people. What I admire the most about my colleagues is this sort of widely shared appreciation that research should not be constrained by traditional disciplinary boundaries. We're actually sitting here in a building that was solely dedicated to interdisciplinary and transdisciplinary work. And it's highly appropriate that that's where the Design Lab was born and currently is flourishing. For me, Don typifies not being restricted by traditional disciplinary boundaries if anyone does. His undergraduate degree is from MIT in electrical engineering. His PhD is from the University of Pennsylvania in mathematical psychology. He then did a postdoc at Harvard Center for Cognitive Studies, and he arrived at UCSD in 1966. This is 6 years after UCSD was originally founded. And a few years later, he published the first of what became an exciting series of books. The first book was Memory and Attention, and it appeared in 1969. A few years later, he became chair of psychology. It was around that time that I first met Don in 1978. As I was writing that, I realized it was only 4 decades ago, which is sobering. It was, I want to say just a few words about that time. It was a really incredibly exciting time of research. One of the things we worked on was a book entitled User-Centered System Design, which was partially chosen because we got the UCSD acronym in it. And it really helped begin the whole field of what people call user-centered design today. Bob Gleschko, who's going to speak a little bit later, and Jonathan Gruden, who's also going to speak, were graduate students in those days. It was also the time of another sort of exciting book effort led by Dave Rumelhart and Jay McClellan on parallel distributed processing that was the beginning of the neural net era, or as we called it in those days, the PDP and connectionist era. And that research has had really direct, can trace it really directly to this massive impact of deep learning that's going on today. Geoff Hinton, who's one of the most noted researchers in that area, was a postdoc here back in those early days. And it's also a time when Ed Hutchins, who was also a postdoc at the same time, began the research that resulted in his cognition in the Wild Book and the birth of distributed cognition that heralded a much richer appreciation of cognition as a distributed, socially situated activity that exploits the extraordinary facilities of culture, language, technology, and embodied interaction with the world. Don and the people around him were among the leaders who established the new discipline of cognitive science and the beginning of what we would call today people-centered design. At UCSD, this crystallized as the first cognitive science department in the world, and Don was the founding chair. And now in the design lab, where Don is the founding director. In 1993, the first of Don's now famous failed retirements began. He took early retirement from UCSD to become an Apple Fellow and then Vice President of Research at Apple. Others today will touch on various periods of his stellar career, but Don's continuing ability to fail retirement has been a key factor behind his long and continuing massive impact on the world of design. I'm sure everyone who has worked with Don will agree that it's nearly impossible to keep up with him intellectually, with the breadth of his knowledge and experience, or even physically, as he climbs the stairs here in Atkinson Hall, always avoiding the elevator, walks in the morning down to Black's, and back up that steep winding road by the Chancellor's residence, or with his amazing ability to write so very clearly about design and paint a picture of the future of designing complex socio-technical systems. Although those who know him best also know that considerable credit for the clarity of his writing also goes to his in-house editor, Julie Norman. 4 years ago, we were fortunate to attract Don back to UCSD to found the Design Lab. Pradeep, our Chancellor, and Jeff Elman deserve special credit for helping make this happen. Today we have organized 2 panels charged really only with reflecting on Don's career and looking to the future. I know you will enjoy hearing from each of the panelists. The presentations will be informal, since we're really among friends, and in deference to Don, done with a minimum of slides. But before the panels begin, we are honored to have Elizabeth Simmons, our Executive Vice Chancellor, and Larry Smar, who directs Cal AT2, to lead off the afternoon, and Scott's going to introduce them.
It is so great to be here. Thank you all for coming. I have to say, I'm really excited that we all are here together today because this group of people, many of whom are here in this room, and Don especially, are shockingly modest about their diverse accomplishments. I mean, that's not normally an academic trait, I think. And when Jim recruited me down to UC San Diego about 4.5 years ago now, I knew a lot of the history. I knew about the user-centered system design. I knew that, about a lot of leadership that you're going to hear in things. For example, deep learning is in the newspaper almost every day. And in my opinion, many of the foundational ideas of deep learning came out of the people that you're going to hear today and their collaborators. And it was really the Sloan Foundation that made that original work possible financially, but it was the minds that made it all happen intellectually. And so I was excited to help instigate and share this with everybody. And but right now I'm up here to introduce 2 rehabilitated former theoretical physicists, very much in our non-tradition. Both of our next speakers were originally trained in theoretical physics, and when I talked to Larry and Elizabeth about many of the grand ideas of our universe, they were like, "Oh yeah, that's what my dissertation was on," and they've since moved on to loftier topics. Larry is the director of Cal IT2, which, as Jim explained, the UCSD instantiation of that is this building here, which is 100,000 square feet of interdisciplinary research space. And that was a big draw for me because it's exceedingly rare to be in one building with people from different departments. And Larry has this he has this very special enthusiasm where I always feel good when I see Larry in the hallway. And I have this, like, I lighten up just a little bit and think, like, my ideas could be just a little bit bigger. And if you look at the diversity of all the stuff going on in the building, Larry has, I think, a special presence that makes a lot of that happen. And Elizabeth is our new executive vice chancellor, which for those of you coming from other universities is sometimes also known as the provost. And she comes here, she was previously a dean at Michigan State. And I'll confess, when we got the design lab started, Geoff, the then dean of social science, and Pradeep, the chancellor, and Suresh, the then EVC, were all really instrumental. And we're all thinking, gosh, we're in the only place in the world where the entire university leadership, Al Pisano, the dean of engineering, everybody's really supportive. This is really unusual. And Suresh stepped down as EVC, and Peter Cowie stepped in as the interim provost, and we're like, uh-oh, what's going to happen? And Peter was also insanely supportive, providing faculty lines, doing a lot of stuff that helped make us thrive. Nascent efforts are dangerous. And then, Elizabeth comes in from somewhere else, and everybody's like, well, what's this going to be like? What's this going to be like? What's going to happen? Theoretical physicists, I don't know. Everybody's got their biases. And we should have known based on Larry to know better. And I've just been absolutely amazed by Elizabeth's kind of calm, visionary leadership at the university. She gave a talk in our Design at Large seminar series, which was one of the most insightful, sincerely, talks about design that I've heard. And it's not directly even her area, but we are extremely fortunate to have Elizabeth's support. I don't think that's automatic, but I wanted to welcome, let's see, is Larry first or Elizabeth? Okay, great. So Elizabeth's going to speak first, and so please give her a very warm welcome.